Vodafone is the largest mobile telecommunications company, and it has 434 million subscribers. Its Vodafone Global Enterprise Division provides telecommunications and IT services to corporate clients in over 65 countries. Vodafone is taking a very different approach to marketing and has revolutionized the industry with their way of doing things. In order to reach their target audience, the company is using media and methods that are more likely to reach and affect the members of Generation Y. The company's advertisements are using an emotional appeal, and the content is either humorous or linked to action through extreme sports such as surfing and motocross. Vodafone's mobile advertising portfolio has been designed with brands and media agencies in mind. This portfolio will provide you with the information you need to run highly targeted and successful advertising campaigns to Vodafone's 3.6 million highly receptive customer base. Vodafone has, through its marketing strategy, achieved something that is both difficult as well as contradictive, being a strong global brand and, at the same time, being perceived as unique and rebellious. As we know that the output of Vodafone consists of purchase behavior and post-purchase evaluation, and the objectives of these are to increase consumer satisfaction of the purchase. Now, the big question in front of a company: how the purchase of a company's service can fit under the habitual decision making. Hello students, and welcome to this lecture on consumer decision-making models, where we shall understand the levels of consumer decision-making and concept of consumer gifting behavior. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives: explain the levels of consumer decision-making, describe about post-purchase evaluation, understand Nicosia models of consumer decision-making, explain Howard Sheth model, understand the concept of consumer gifting behavior. Let's start with the introduction of consumer decision-making models. Consumer behavior has been a long-term question in scholarly literature. It involves the use and disposal of products and questioning how they are purchased. The products or services a consumer often uses is of great interest to the marketer, because this can help them to find out how a product is best positioned in order to encourage consumers to increase their consumption. Understanding consumer behavior and knowing customers has and never will be simple. Consumers may say one thing but do another. They may not be in touch with their deeper motivations. Consumer decision-making has long been of interest to researchers. Beginning about 300 years ago, early economists started to examine the basis of consumer decision-making. This early work approached the topic from an economic perspective and focused solely on the act of purchase. The most prevalent model from this perspective is utility theory, which proposes that consumers make choices based on the expected outcomes of their decisions. Consumers are viewed as rational decision makers who are only concerned with self-interest. Let us now discuss about consumer decision-making. Consumer decision-making has long been of great interest to researchers. Early decision-making studies concentrated on the purchase action. It was only after the 1950s that modern concepts of marketing were incorporated into studies of consumer decision-making, including a wider range of activities. The contemporary research indicates that more activities are involved than the purchase itself. Many other factors influence the consumer decision-making than the final outcome. Vast numbers of studies have investigated this issue, and many models have been developed accordingly. Theories of consumer decision-making have evolved over time. The first theories were based on rational choice theories known as the economic view, assuming that individuals act completely rational to maximize their benefits in a purchase situation. This view supposes a rational decision maker who has well-defined preferences and a clear choice set. For the economic view to be true, consumers should be aware of all product alternatives, be able to correctly rank advantages and disadvantages of each alternative, and finally select the best one. A number of different approaches have been adopted in the study of decision making, drawing on different traditions of psychology. There are different typological classifications of these works, with 5 major approaches emerging. Each of these 5 approaches posit alternative models of man and emphasize the need to examine quite different variables. Economic man, psychodynamic, behaviorist, cognitive, humanistic. Economic man. As identified, early research regarded man as entirely rational and self-interested, making decisions based upon the ability to maximize utility whilst expending the minimum effort. Psychodynamic approach. The psychodynamic tradition within psychology is widely attributed to the work of Sigmund Freud. This view posits that behavior is subject to biological influence through instinctive forces or drives, which act outside of conscious thought. Behaviorist approach. Essentially, behaviorism is a family of philosophies stating that behavior is explained by external events and that all things that organisms do, including actions, thoughts, and feelings, can be regarded as behaviors. Cognitive approach. In contrast to the foundations of classical behavioralism, the cognitive approach ascribes observed action, behavior, to intrapersonal cognition. The individual is viewed as an information processor. Levels of consumer decision-making. Research suggests that customers go through a 5-level decision-making process in any purchase. In this model, the consumer passes through 5 levels: problem recognition, information search, evaluation and selection of alternatives, decision implementation, and post-purchase evaluation. Problem recognition. In the information processing model, the consumer buying process begins when the buyer recognizes a problem or need. Information search. When a consumer discovers a problem, he or she is likely to search for more information. For example, one may simply pay more attention to product information of a personal computer. They become more attentive to computer ads, computers purchased by their friends, and peer conversations about computers, or may more actively seek information by visiting stores, talking to friends, or reading computer magazines, and many more. Through gathering information, the consumer learns more about some brands that compete in the market and their features and characteristics. Theoretically, there is a total set of brands available to them, but they will become aware of only a subset of the brands, awareness set, in the market. Some of these brands may satisfy their initial buying criteria, such as price and processing speed consideration set. As they proceed to more information search, only a few will remain as strong candidates. Choice set. Evaluation and selection of alternatives. How does the consumer process competitive brand information and evaluate the value of brands? Unfortunately, there is no single simple evaluation process applied by all consumers or by one consumer in all buying situations. As the need is often personal, consumers differ as to their beliefs about what product benefits and attributes are more or less important and relevant in satisfying their needs. Based on their personal judgment on importance of benefits and attributes, consumers develop a set of attitudes or preferences toward the various brands. One may express his or her preferences of the brands in terms of ranking, probability of choice, and so forth. Decision implementation. To actually implement the purchase decision, however, a consumer needs to select both specific items, brands, and specific outlets, where to buy, to resolve the problems. There are, in fact, 3 ways these decisions can be made. Simultaneously. Item first, outlet second. Outlet first, item second. Post-purchase evaluation. The post-purchase evaluation processes are directly influenced by the type of preceding decision-making process. Directly relevant here is the level of purchase involvement of the consumer. Purchase involvement is often referred to as the level of concern for or interest in the purchase situation, and it determines how extensively the consumer searches information in making a purchase decision. Although purchase involvement is viewed as a continuum from low to high, it is useful to consider 2 extreme cases here. Suppose one buys a certain brand of product, example, Diet Pepsi, as a matter of habit, habitual purchase. For him or her, buying a cola drink is a very low purchase involvement situation, and he or she is not likely to search and evaluate product information extensively. Now we will study the models of consumer decision-making. Traditional marketing models tend to focus on the second element and treat the large number of consumers in a macroscopic, averaged way. Alternatively, one can look at individual consumers and their buying behavior and try to derive observable large-scale effects like changes in market share. Ideally, one would like to connect the microscopic consumer viewpoint to the macroscopic viewpoint of the brand manager. Howard-Sheth model. Howard and Sheth used the term buying behavior and not consumer behavior, as the industrial buyers and consumers are similar in most aspects. While the model was proposed in the 1960s for industrial buying, the term buyer is used to connote both industrial consumers and personal consumers. While they differentiated between 3 levels of decision-making, EPS, LPS, and RPS, The model focuses on repeat buying purchase. Stimulus inputs, input variables. The input variables refer to the stimuli in the environment. They take the form of informative cues about the product or service offering. These information cues could relate to quality, price, distinctiveness, service, and availability. Hypothetical constructs. Howard and Sheth classified the hypothetical constructs into two major groups, viz. Perceptual constructs and learning constructs. Responsive outputs, output variables. The output variables refer to the buyer's action or response to stimulus inputs. The response outputs comprise 5 constituents, viz. Attention, comprehension, attitude, intention, and purchase. Exogenous variables. The Howard and Sheth model also comprises certain constant exogenous variables that influence some or all of the constructs explained, and thereby impact the final output variables. Engel-Blackwell-Miniard model. This model of consumer behavior was originally designed to serve as framework for organizing the fast-growing body of knowledge concerning consumer behavior. Like the Howard-Sheth model, it has gone through a number of revisions aimed at improving its descriptive ability and clarifying the basic relationship between component and subcomponent. Initially, this model was known as the Engel, Collett, and Blackwell EKB model, but after it went through many revisions and modifications, this model was named as Engel-Blackwell-Miniard EBM model. The model consists of 5 parts, viz. Information output, information processing, decision process stage, decision process variables, and external influences. Information input. The input stage is generally the data collection stage of the consumer decision-making process. Information processing. Stimuli received in the first stage provide information. The information is processed into meaningful information. Decision process stage. At any time during the information processing, the consumer could enter into this stage. There is problem recognition. This is followed by a search for information, which may be internal based on memory. The search of information is also impacted by environmental influences. Thereafter, the consumer evaluates the various alternatives, while evaluation and belief lead to the formation of attitudes, which in turn affect the purchase intention. The next process is the choice and purchase, which gets impacted by individual differences. Finally, there is an outcome in the form of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. This outcome acts as a feedback on the input and impacts the cycle again. Environmental influences, individual differences, and social influences directly and indirectly influence each of the stages of the decision process. However, EKB proposed that it is not necessary for every consumer to go through all the 5 stages. It would depend on whether the problem is an extensive or a routine problem-solving behavior. Decision process variables. The model proposes individual influences that affect the various stages of the decision-making process. Individual characteristics include constructs like demographics, motives, beliefs, attitude, personality, values, lifestyle, normative compliance, etc. External influences. The model also proposes certain environmental and situational influences that affect the decision-making process. The environmental influences include circles of social influence like culture, subculture, social class, reference groups, family, and other normative influences. Situational influences include consumers' financial condition. Nicosia models of consumer decision making. Nicosia's model is an integrative model that tries to integrate the body of knowledge that existed at the time of its formulation in the area of consumer behavior. It was a pioneering attempt to focus on the conscious decision-making behavior of consumers, where the act of purchase was only one stage in the entire ongoing decision process of consumers. The flow charting approach proposed by Nicosia simplifies and systemizes the variables that affect consumer decision-making. However, the model suffers from limitations in the sense that the model proposes assumptions, boundaries, and constraints that need not be realistic. It has been argued that attitude, motivation, and experience may not occur in the same sequence. Variables in the model have not been clearly defined. Factors internal to the consumer have not been defined and dealt with completely. The mathematical testing of the model and its validity are questionable. This model focuses on the relationship between the firm and its potential consumers. The firm communicates with consumers through its marketing messages, advertising, and the consumers react to these messages by purchasing response. Looking to the model, one will find that the firm and the consumer are connected with each other. The firm tries to influence the consumer, and the consumer is influencing the firm by their decision. The Nicosia model is divided into four major fields. Field 1. The consumer attitude based on the firm's messages. The first field is divided into two subfields. The first subfield deals with the firm's marketing environment and communication efforts that affect the consumer attitudes, the competitive environment, and the characteristics of target market. Field 2. Search and evaluation. The consumer will start to search for other firms' brand and evaluate the firm's brand in comparison with alternate brands. In this, the firm motivates the consumer to purchase its brands. Field 3. The act of the purchase. The result of motivation will arise by convincing the consumer to purchase the firm's products from a specified retailer. Field 4. Feedback. This model analyzes the feedback of both the firm and the consumer after purchasing the product. Did you know Nobel laureate Herbert A. Simon sees economic decision-making as a vain attempt to be rational? He claims in 1947 and 1957 that if a complete analysis is to be done, a decision will be immensely complex. He also says that people's information processing ability is very limited. Let's get to know about consumer gifting behavior. Gifting is an act of symbolic communication with explicit and implicit meanings ranging from congratulations and love to regret, obligation, and dominance. Gifting behavior has been described as the process of gift exchange that takes place between a giver and a recipient. The definition is broad in nature and embraces gifts given voluntarily as well as gifts that are in obligation. It includes gifts given to others and gifts to oneself. Gifts are a particularly interesting part of consumer behavior. Products and services chosen as gifts represent more than ordinary everyday purchases. Because of their symbolic meaning, They are associated with such important events as Mother's Day, birthdays, engagements, weddings, graduations, and many other accomplishments and milestones. In business, maintaining relationship with the customer is very important. Management Innovation pointed out that relationship marketing impacts consumers' decisions and their consumption satisfaction. Firms establish loyalty programs to foster usage loyalty and a commitment to continued usage of their products and services. Relationship marketing is all about building trust between the firm and its customers and keeping promises made to the customers. Therefore, the focus is always on developing long-term bonds with customers by making them feel special and by providing them with personalized services. There are some gifting relationship categories which are intergroup, a group giving a gift to another group. Example, a Christmas gift from one family to another. Intercategory, an individual giving a gift to a group or a group giving a gift to an individual. Example, a group of friends chips in to buy a new mother a baby gift. Intra-group, a group giving a gift to itself or its members. Example, a family buys a VCR for itself as a Christmas gift. Interpersonal, an individual giving a gift to another individual. Example, birthday chocolates presented from a sister to a brother. Intrapersonal, self-gift. Example, a woman buys herself jewelry to cheer herself up. Interestingly, giving gifts has multiple benefits for both parties. First, gift receivers rated the gifts as more exciting than gift givers in general. Gift givers underestimated how much joy their gifts would bring, regardless of what the gift was. Second, gift givers preferred the riskier gift rather than the generic or easy-to-gift item and wished that the gift givers took more chances. Finally, the underestimation of how much people would like the gifts was particularly large for risky gifts. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. The cognitive approach is derived in a large part from cognitive psychology, which can trace its roots back to early philosophers who were interested in the origins of knowledge. Aristotle, who proposed the first theory of memory, and Descartes, who explored how knowledge is represented mentally in his meditations. The post-purchase evaluation processes are directly influenced by the type of preceding decision-making process. Traditional marketing models tend to focus on the second element and treat the large number of consumers in a macroscopic, averaged way. Alternatively, one can look at individual consumers and their buying behavior and try to derive observable large-scale effects like changes in market share. Howard and Sheth classified the hypothetical constructs into two major groups, viz., perceptual constructs and learning constructs. These constitute the central part of the model and deal with the psychological variables which operate when the consumer is undergoing the decision-making process. Nicosia's model is an integrative model that tries to integrate the body of knowledge that existed at the time of its formulation in the area of consumer behavior. It was a pioneering attempt to focus on the conscious decision-making behavior of consumers, where the act of purchase was only one stage in the entire ongoing decision process of consumers.